I want to talk about commitment today. This is a really scary word to people who are like me. I thought that if I was committed to something that it was set in stone and I could never change my mind. That it was like, there is no other choice and it has to be the exact right choice, and it created a lot of stress for me. So when I went to treatment, I was really grateful that they did like a step-by-step process of how to make commitments so that I could learn that it's okay to make some commitments, and just because you say one thing doesn't mean you don't have the right to change your mind. I hope you don't change your mind on this one. But when I was in the center, I remember I was on the second phase. That's irrelevant. I remember that they asked as one of our assignments to make a commitment to somebody that was on the staff there that I would never weigh myself again. And so I remember going up to Whitney the nurse, and I talked myself through saying, well, this one looks like the easiest of all the assignments, and I'm really kind of sick of being on phase 2, so I'm just going to do this one because whatever, like I'll leave here and Whitney won't know whether I weigh myself or not, so it doesn't really matter. So I went up to Whitney the nurse and I said, I am making a commitment to never weigh myself again, except when I go to the doctor's office because I'm pregnant, or when there's a big serious issue and I'm getting surgery and they need to weigh me, and like if I need to know my weight, then I'll weigh myself. And she started asking me questions saying, well, couldn't you do like a blind weight? And that sounded really foreign to me, but I said, well, sure, because I figured she wouldn't sign off unless I said, yeah, that sounds great. So she signed off on my assignment, and then probably a week later, I went on to phase 3 and I felt really good about myself. I remember though, when I discharged and I did have to go to the doctor's office, and it got to that space where you're walking up to the scale and the nurse says, okay, please stand up there. And I had my face towards the scale, and then I remembered, but I made this commitment to Whitney a while back. And mostly I made this commitment to myself. Whether Whitney knows that I broke my commitment or not, I'll know that I broke my commitment to Whitney, and I don't like that. I care about myself enough and I care about Whitney enough to know that I want to keep that commitment. So I had to turn myself around and tell the nurse, can you do this in a blind weight? And she didn't quite know what that was, so I had to explain it to her, which was like, really? But it was so great. It was such a great feeling when I got off the scale knowing I kept my commitment to Whitney and I kept my commitment to myself. And I'll tell you, I went into a class probably 3 years later, 2.5 years later. It was a health class, a women's health class, and the teacher had started off by giving us the syllabus. One of them was to keep track of the food that we ate and to weigh ourselves. I was very nervous because I thought, how am I going to do this class? I want to do this class because they talk about a lot of fun things. So I talked to the teacher afterwards and said, I have a history of an eating disorder, and I made a commitment to myself never to weigh myself again. And this is where divine intervention came in. She looked at me and said, I knew you before you went to treatment, and I've been watching you, and I've been praying to you, to my higher power, that you'd be okay. And experiences like this happened a lot. But she said, I haven't weighed myself since 1978. And it's so cool to me to see that other people aren't weighing themselves. So she said, absolutely, if you just want to guess, let's just guess that you weigh 150 pounds. Who cares what you really weigh? But that's going to be your set weight in my class. And I said, you know what, that sounds great. And it was so nice to voice my commitment, to have it respected, and to have somebody else who understood where I was coming from without judgment. Since that time, I've still kept that commitment. I haven't weighed myself since October 13th of 2002, and I plan on staying that way. There are so many other things that create the value, and it's not in the scale. It's not in my numbers. It's not in my pant size. It's not in the numbers on the scale. And so I am asking you now, what commitments are you going to make for your recovery? Where are you going to start?